Welcome to Game Crunch, a weekly video game podcast. My name is Mike Anastasia. With me today we got Brandon.
Hello.
We were talking about games and things.
Hello. Games and things.
Games and things. High energy start to this episode.
Yeah, definitely. It's been a long week.
Yes, it has. What do we got on the agenda? Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom's out. Metaphor. I don't even know how to say that.
ReFantazio, I think. I don't actually know how to say
Not
it
sure.
either, to be honest.
Yeah. So they put a prologue out for it. This is the
4-hour demo. 4-hour demo.
The game from the Persona people, right?
Correct. You want to start with that? I don't mind hopping into it.
Okay, yeah, let's start with it then.
All right, so I'm going to just say metaphor because I don't know how to say the last part of it. So I'm just going to say that. Metaphor is a new JRPG from the Persona devs. Yay! It's very interesting so far. It's got a very unique art style and like design as well. It seems that its gameplay is different from Persona, so let me go ahead and put that out there first and foremost. It did remind me a lot of it did remind me of Persona, but it also reminded me of some other RPGs I cannot even think of the names of right now. But either way, it's very interesting, and I think the most interesting part about it is kind of like its story, because it starts off and you're being talked to, and it asks you to name yourself, but the game is not talking to the character you're playing as. It's talking to you, the actual player, specifically asking you to name yourself and tell them your name. And then it kind of goes off in a way that's interesting, where there is like this fantasy tome that the main character that you end up playing as is carrying around during this war that's going on, and all this prejudice and other stuff between different factions and this, that, and the other. And at one point in the prologue, he opens up the tome and starts reading from the stories in it. And he's like reading them to his fairy companion and everything. And the stories are of our world, the real world. And so the game kind of gets a bit meta by making our real world the storybook world that the characters of that game are fantasizing about. And then you get introduced to the main villain / like monsters of the game. And the first thing you hear is, "Oh no, there's been another human attack." And essentially, at least it seems so far, like we are the monsters in their world, and they see us as like demons and that sort of thing, and we're like grotesque beings. It's very interesting. The gameplay, again, like I said, very Persona-like, but it's also got a lot of its own stuff going for it as well. You can like target specific body parts and like lop them off, and also like hit them for like weak point, which then gives you extra attack damage. So like, whereas in like Persona, there are some elements of that and whatnot, but it's a lot more pronounced here, where like that's a very fine point of the combat itself. Yeah, it's looking like it'll be really interesting. Now, granted, I only played about 2 hours of the prologue, so I haven't even finished the entire prologue, and I think it's about 4 hours if you rush it. Some people were saying they played it like 5-6 hours plus. So I don't really know where I stand currently in it, but I do think this is a really interesting concept for a game, and I really want to see where it goes. On top of that, I really, really love the music of this game. It is so incredibly good. I think if anything, even if this game ends up being a dud, its music will still be like a top contender for some of the best music this year. It is so good. So yeah, I'll check back in, because this is a game I'm planning on picking up at some point this year and finishing before the end of the year. I have finished a lot of games this year, and I have a lot of thoughts on many different things. But this one and a few more, I'm probably going to try to slot in there right at the end. So, yeah, there you go.
Okay.
I also want to talk about a horror game that I played with Katie. Played it all the way through. In one sitting, I believe I did. I don't know if I talked about this last week. I literally do not know if I talked about this.
I don't think so. It doesn't look familiar.
But like looking at it, right? Like going back and looking at when I played it, I feel like I played it the night of the podcast.
Okay.
Which I could technically check. Now I'm like second guessing myself. I'm like, what the fuck? It doesn't matter. Anyway, I played Still Wakes the Deep from the developers of Amnesia, a machine for pigs. I believe that's what it is. Chinese Room.
Yeah,
that's what it is. This game's really good. This is a really good horror game. Let's see. Let me see if I can think. Oh, there we go. I can see Katie's information and see when we played it. So we played it on Wednesday. So yeah, okay. Yeah, we played it on Wednesday. So I didn't talk about this. All right, cool. So here we go. Yeah, so this is a game where you are on a oil rigger. And the oil rig it gets attacked by something. Because like they're drilling somewhere that they shouldn't be, essentially. And upon them drilling into this, the game then becomes like a Lovecraftian nightmare where slowly some otherworldly beast is possessing, changing the world around you and doing all this like really fucked up shit. And you have to like make your way through the oil rig to try to escape while saving your crewmates at the same time. This is a really good game. Like, this was really good. It only took like a few hours to finish. Like, I'm gonna say like 5, maybe 6.
That's reasonable.
But it was very well written. It was very well paced, and it was a really enjoyable game, pretty much start to finish. Honestly, it was pretty obvious where it was going from the get-go. So like if you're kind of used to these sort of horror games, it's not anything that's like gonna surprise you, but it is really well written, like incredibly well written. And I actually had like a lot of fun playing it and seeing like what the next mechanic or what the next portion of the ship I was going to be going through and what had happened to it, and watching all these like otherworldly beings that are now inhabiting the ship and changing like it's just the concept of reality around you. It was really neat. It was really well done, and I actually highly recommend it. It is on Game Pass, so if you have Game Pass, you can play it already. Yeah, it's very fun. I highly recommend playing that game.
Okay. Anything else?
And honestly, that's it. That's all I've played.
Okay. That sounds like it's good.
I mean, I did play. I will say one more thing, but it's not anything new, and it's also not completed yet. But over the last several months, like last 3 months now, the community on PC has been working to getting Bloodborne fully playable on PC through emulation. It is almost done, and it's expected to be done by Halloween. I've been checking it out periodically every time there's a new update for it. The most recent update has made it where I can pretty much fully play the game without any crashes whatsoever on PC, and it's great. There's a new update that just came out yesterday that I'm probably going to be checking out in the upcoming days because I'm not like one of the the contributors, so I don't get access to it until everyone releases it. But I've been like looking at it and like checking out how it works and everything. And since I don't really know how to build the C++ that I need in order to run it myself, even though I do have the packaging files for it, I'm just waiting for someone to package it up into a release for the public. But it is incredibly well. Like the amount of progress that people have made on getting Bloodborne running on PC over the last 3 months, it has gone from you can boot it, but only the start screen appears and it's in red, to you can boot it, but we've now got the start screen appearing and it's no longer completely in red, to you can boot it and now you can get past the start screen and you can create a character, but then it crashes, to you can boot it, but you get in game and you can watch the cutscene, and then it crashes, to you can boot it, but there's lots of visual errors and it's running very slow, to you can boot it, and now the 60 FPS patch that works on modded PS4s actually works on it, but there's lighting issues, to you can boot it and the game is fully playable, but there's still lighting issues and graphical issues, to now you can boot it, but the 60 FPS patch isn't working as well, and neither is the frame pacing, but all the lighting is fixed, and we are almost done. And that is where we're at right now. So it is almost complete, to the point where you'll be able to play the entire game at 60 FPS, start to finish, on PC, which is something that can't even be done on non-modded PS4s right now. So essentially, the entire PC community has been remastering Bloodborne for Sony since they won't do it. And that's where we're at right now.
Oh, don't worry. I'm sure Sony will pay you back in the nicest way possible.
Sony's not Nintendo.
Yeah, but Sony already has lots of reasons to not support the PC community. So, it could just be tempting them to somehow support it less, if that's possible.
Yes, not support the community that actually gave them money when they didn't make enough money on their consoles because no one's actually buying their games. But then when they brought it over to PC, they made the actual funds they were looking to break even and even make a profit off of 3 different games that did not make a profit when released solely on the PS5. Yes, I'm sure Sony's definitely going to pull out funding just because someone's emulating a game that they refuse to remake.
And then turned around and locked everything behind PSN and completely tanked like at least one of their PC games.
They sure did.
It's
sure
not
did. 2 now. Because God of War Ragnarok released last week with less than 50,000 players because of the fact that it had a PSN requirement. The thing is, and I've said this before and I'll say it again, Sony's going to learn. They're going to learn like Microsoft learned. They're going to learn like EA learned. You don't fuck around with people if you want their money. And it's not going to be a case of, oh no, they pulled out their funding and then they just left PC entirely. No, because they need PC right now to fund them, because they have been making the biggest fucking flounders ever. I mean, what about that 400 million that was just lost on Concord? What about the fact that the PS5 Pro is still up for sale right now because people aren't buying it and the pre-orders didn't sell out in the United States or the UK? What about the fact that they literally tried to charge like triple the price for a package that only had 12,000 and that sold out, and it's only being scalped online, and they're actually losing money off of those because the scalpers are going to be making more money than they made off of that? What about the fact that they completely fucked up and destroyed 2 of their biggest releases that they had on PC because of their PSN bullshit? What about the fact that they locked out 177 regions, completely destroying the profit margins that they could make on their games because of the fact that they were just being greedy and only wanted to please shareholders instead of actually making money? Sony is 1 flop away from being the next Sega at this point. They are 100% in the gaming space right now, 1 major flop away, like their last Concord flop, from becoming Sega. They need PC to actually continue to exist. This ain't a case of they're leaving. They're stuck there. We don't have to give them money, and we aren't going to unless they straighten up their bullshit.
But exactly, I think that's the point. Like, why spend all this money porting things if they're only going to get what'd you say, 50,000 worth of sales?
I think there was 50,000 sales on Ragnarok.
Yeah,
I think it might be 102,000 now after week 2.
Better.
But yeah, it's.
Yeah. But I mean, those kind of numbers aren't like. I mean, who knows how many they.
What are their sales on PlayStation right now? Because it's not. It's just not. Because the way console gaming works is those first weeks of sales, that's all that matters, and then it's done. It doesn't matter. Then you've got your places like GameStop selling it for this much price. You got your places like Target selling it on a like fucking this much price, and they're not seeing the massive amounts of like buys on that game because it's 2 years old now.
Yeah, exactly. But at what point is it justifiable for them to keep doing it? Because there is a number that is not justifiable where it's too low, like where they're spending more money to put stuff on PC than it is, in terms of what they're
Well,
getting back.
seeing as though they also just invested in their PC division, I think the number would have to be they don't make as much back as they invested in it, and then they have to cut their losses and fire all of those people, but also lose all of that profit margin that they could have potentially had, which would then also still throw them into a zone where they have to weigh the pros and cons of doing that. And at the end of the day, I don't think that there's going to be a chance that they pull out because they've already invested so much into it.
I mean, you aren't wrong in terms of like they probably will just end up laying off that PC company. That's fine. But the other option is it's not like you can't just be like, all right, we're just going to turn you into a support studio instead. Like, I mean, you could still reutilize those resources for something else. Like, it's not like they're so stuck in PC they can't do anything else. We'll see.
Right.
I think though, if they're only getting like 50,000 for God of War, one of their biggest titles on PC, like their incentive for continuing it has got to be like
here's the thing.
dwindling.
So here's the thing, right? If you look at their sales for things like Horizon Forbidden West, Horizon Zero Dawn, God of War 2018, Days Gone, Ratchet and Clank, Returnal, all of those games, I think 3 out of those only turned a profit after they were released on PC. They did not turn a profit on PlayStation, period. They were a loss of sales until they released them on PC. The issue is, after those, they then put in this dumbass PSN requirement, which is the same thing Xbox did. See, here's the thing. Xbox did this in 2007, 2008, somewhere in there, when they introduced games for Windows Live. They learned a lesson very quickly, and they left PC. So that did happen. They came back. They came back massively and restructured the entire thing because they realized at the end of the day they need to be able to diversify those like sales. They need to be able to get multiple market sales, otherwise they cannot continue to operate. Nintendo's totally fine because Nintendo can operate at least for another 10 years solely on the fact that they are Nintendo. Microsoft isn't fine anymore. They have to branch out to things like Game Pass, and they have to branch out to things like streaming on TVs and this, that, and the other and whatnot. And they have to do that because the cost of games are going up so much. Sony's at the point where they've now made many mistakes, and they are getting almost to that same element as Xbox is, where they don't have a choice. They are either going to have to go all in on doing things like Microsoft is, where it's like making their own version of Game Pass and doing this, that, and the other, which they've already said they will never do. Or they're going to have to release on places like PC and Xbox and Switch, which they have been doing. They just thought that they could fucking dictate what they do on PC, which they can't, because that's not how PC players operate. You don't tell them what to do. They tell you what to do, or you don't get their money. It's as simple as that. Microsoft learned that the hard way. Ubisoft learned that the hard way. EA learned that the hard way. Rockstar learned that the hard way. And now it's time for Sony to learn that the hard way. There's a reason why all these other companies I just named came back to PC and have stayed on PC. It's because games are just too fucking expensive not to also be making a profit from other people. And because of that, until Sony learns, they're either not going to make a profit on their games and end up like fucking Sega, or they're going to straighten their shit out and they're going to remove the bullshit hoops that people have to jump through and go back to being the way they have been for the last 6 years before they fucking flipped the script and got too big for their fucking britches this year and thought that they could tell other people what to do. And everyone said, no, fuck you. And then that is when they got fucking tanked. They got absolutely tanked because they decided that they thought they had control of a market space that is not theirs. And they don't. They don't have control of it, and they never will. And other people had to learn that, and now they have to as well. And when they do, they'll start turning a profit again. Until they do, they won't. Simple as that.
Yeah, but they could turn they could also, with smarter business sense, turn a profit on their own systems too. Like, there's not anything that says that they inherently need to do PC to match up these sales.
So they
Like,
lose money on every single system that they sell.
yeah, but
If
they
you
also
release, if you pay a porting company a certain lump sum and also, the money to do the porting job,
Mhm.
like a lump sum for existing, like, we opened the company, it does this, that and the other, or whatever, and then you also pay them the money to, like, as a business, like, to pay the workers, that sort of thing, that is going to be better for them in the long run than continuously selling every single console that they make at a loss. It just is. They're only losing money by selling systems. If they sell software, which is what everyone wants to do right now, they make money no matter what.
yeah, but
It's not hard to open up a side company to do porting jobs. It's not hard
no.
to, especially when you've already made that company, when you've already invested into that company. You know what is difficult? Trying to turn a profit on a system that's not selling out when it's the new hotness that was supposed to be coming out in less than a month. That's a problem.
I think you're being a bit too optimistic on the PC sales and how much they're
I
offering
think
them.
you just do not understand.
No, I understand. I just don't, like I said, Sony keeps on running against this wall and keeps on losing money. If they're going to keep on losing money in the PC space, they're not just going to be like, well, maybe next time it will work. They're going to scrap that.
You ready? You ready? You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Here. Horizon Zero Dawn, just for
Okay.
releasing on PC. You
Mm-hmm.
listening?
Yeah.
Made $3 million in revenue alone, just on PC.
Okay. That
Days
was
Gone.
reasonable. Mm-hmm.
Days Gone, 180, 100, sorry, not 100, 852,000 in revenue on PC alone. God of War,
Reasonable.
$1 million in PC revenue alone, just for the first one.
Is this just based on sales, or is this what they're reporting as like their like profit loss?
No, these are the reported profits just for the PC sales.
So this is already taking out the cost of porting and all of that.
This just says let's see. This just says sales numbers.
Okay. So it could be, it's obviously not taking into account like those other costs. I mean, obviously they made money on Horizon, so that one's good. Days Gone, I would assume that they at least probably broke even.
So here's the thing: their PC porting like company that they have is pretty much all the same one. It's Nixus. It's Nexus.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
So that's one company that's doing all of these that's already being paid for their work. So they're getting these funds. Like, they are getting these extra funds off of games that are no longer making sales on the console side of things. Do you think God of War 2018 was still giving them sales? Absolutely not. Do you think Horizon Zero Dawn, the original one, was still making them sales? Absolutely not. Do you think fucking Days Gone was making them sales? Fuck no. But they just had that money come out of nowhere just because they released it on PC.
See, that's the part
that's
that's where I'm getting the disconnect here, because that's not true. Like, they have to spend money to make that money.
They've already spent the money.
No. They did not spend this money. You have to pay people like hourly wages, yearly wages. Like, there's still a cost associated with porting it, even if it's minimal. If it's in-house, obviously it's going to be cheaper than doing an external studio, but you can't hand wave it and said there's no cost to it, because they're literally paying these people to do it. So
You're correct. But listen. All right. Is the cost any of the millions that they just made from those 3 games? Just 3. Is it any of the millions that they just made from those 3 games? I'm gonna tell you right now, I'm pretty sure they at least cleared 2 million, even after all the payments, or 3 million, even after all the payments.
For the 2 games that you mentioned,
for the 3 games that I mentioned. Well, like I said,
obviously with Horizon, obviously, they made more than enough money to justify it. Days Gone, I would assume that they would. I mean, usually those kind of porting things don't cost that much. But that's what I'm saying. It's a cost, benefit thing. Like I said, it really kind of depends on the long term sales and stuff. But like I said, you can't. There's always a cost associated with anything, and then not to mention too, it's like even when we talk about like profits, it's like, are we talking about is that profit before Steam took their cut? Is it after they took their cut? Like kind of are these Sony fluff numbers? Are these numbers that someone else has kind of gathered by the total sales? Like I would say, just kind of based on like what you were saying for Horizon, I guess I didn't realize that it had sold that well, and that's really good. So I mean that's more justifiable. I was too hung up on the 50,000 for God of War, which seems really low, and
it's only been a week. It's only been
Yeah.
a week, and 50,000 isn't how much they made. That's how many players have bought it. So
Yeah, I know.
50,000
Still really low.
at $70. Hold on, let
Charging
me.
70 for a PC port of a 4-year-old game?
Do you honestly think the new God of? Oh no, I was talking about Ragnarok for the 50,000. The fucking 2 mil that I just told you is how much God of War made on PC.
Okay, so God of War 2018. Okay.
Yes, I'm talking about Ragnarok, which released last week. That has 50,000, and it's only been out for a week. That's what I was talking about.
Still really low.
Absolutely,
I would think.
absolutely.
Yeah.
This is post, right? This is post PlayStation Network requirement, which is, and you have to take this into account, absolutely destroying the value of the game because pretty much no one outside of the US and Canada can buy it.
I mean, understand all of that. I'm just saying, there's definitely a point where, X amount of sales, they're only going to take a beating for so long on PC before they can. If they're not making money, they just won't keep doing it. But it sounds like it's at least they're at least breaking even, and that should at least be enough for them to keep going, I would think. So, yeah, I mean that makes more sense. I would hope.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know. We'll see. I honestly though think that Sony is far more likely to take their toys and go home than to keep playing nice.
And I think they will end up like Sega if they do.
Yeah.
Like it's as simple as that. I think they will end up like Sega if they do, or they'll end up like Microsoft is currently, where no one gives a shit about their existence.
Because I mean, here's another way to think about it, Brandon. I guess kind of based on the numbers that you have thrown out. If the only thing that's holding Sony together is, I'll graciously say, $6 million from PC sales, then they have a whole other slew of problems. Because that, like,
and they do have a whole other slew of problems. But also, we have to understand those numbers I gave you. Those are constantly going up. Like those are constantly getting more sales. The console space, when it comes to past games, it is very difficult to sell a game outside of its initial release period.
Oh yeah,
that is just how it is on console. It is not on PC. That is just a fact. Like,
yeah, but you're still not going to get like maybe a long time. But like God of War Ragnarok, the odds of that even coming close to what it sold on console, very unlikely.
Oh no. You're not getting those like combined 20 million over 5 years. You're not going to get those. You'll be lucky if you get like 7. But also take into account it took 5 years to get the 20 million. It took less than 1 to get like 3 on PC. You understand what I'm saying? Like it took 5 years to do that. They are clearly making money off of the software. The software is already up. They're not having to maintain the software outside of patches. And most patches are done after the first month when it comes to like,
they're not doing anything with those anymore.
Exactly.
But also though, on the flip side though, that 20 million that they made over 5 years, probably like 15 of that was in the first year on the console.
Yeah, and like 15 of that's already been funneled into like Spider-Man 2, and that money's gone. But they have more money coming in constantly from the software sales that they don't have to lose money off of the hardware sales that people would normally have to go out and use, like have to do in order to purchase a system and in order to be able to play said game. Whereas someone's buys a PC, it's from Nvidia. Someone buys a PC, it's a AMD graphics card. It's not money that's being taken out of Sony's pocket just because someone is playing a game on PC or purchasing a game on PC. However, it would be money directly being taken out of Sony's pocket if they were to go out and buy, say, a PS5 or a PS5 Pro just to play such and such game. So they're making that money there and not losing that money on the hardware sales, which then makes it so at the end of the day, the people that do buy the consoles, they are also contributing to the actual console sales, which is causing them to lose money. But that's not a big deal because they have a lot more people buying the consoles. They have a lot more people buying this, that, and the other until recently with the PS5 Pro, which I've already stated is kind of a huge flop right now, at least in terms of on pre-orders with the US and the UK. And it's kind of trending upwards where prices are going up and up and up and up no matter what it is, be it graphics cards or consoles or handhelds and this, that, and the other. Like we just had the ROG X get announced and it's $900 fucking dollars, which is just insane to me. A PC handheld is not $900 worth. Sorry, that's a terrible idea. And when you take all that stuff into account and people buying it through this, that, and the other, and you're not losing money, you're only gaining money off of it, as opposed to the 100, 200 or so you're going to be losing from your console sales. I think in the long run, having the profits diversified and split up between all these other different things, such as releasing on PC, releasing on Switch, like they did the MLB Show games, that sort of thing, and Xbox where they put the MLB Show games and this sort of thing. All that stuff is going to help them in the long run because they're not losing money off their own hardware, which allows them to sell more of their own hardware, which allows them to make money to get closer to the point where they're just constantly making money off their hardware sales. I think when you take all of that stuff into account, it's not specifically the fact that they are releasing on PC that is keeping them afloat. You are correct about that. You're 100% correct. But you have to look at the bigger picture of what them releasing on PC and being able to make this extra money allows them to do as a sort of domino effect. That's what I was trying to what's the word I'm looking for? Articulate. Explain, more or less. It gives them more room to be able to do the other things that they want to do, and it allows them to make more money elsewhere as well and be able to upgrade and do this, that, and the other for their consoles like they just did with the PS5 Pro, which they released. I'm sure some of that is from being able to make their money elsewhere instead of just on PlayStation at this point in time.
I think you are way more optimistic about this than I am. But
I think you just don't understand how it works.
No, I understand.
That's what I'm trying to explain.
I fully
Again,
understand.
I am not saying this is a PC that's the thing that's specifically making them the money. I'm saying it's the fact that they're able to continue to put their money and invest elsewhere because they're continuing to have a constant stream of revenue from putting their games elsewhere. You're not going to see Sony put their games on Xbox. But you are seeing them, for instance, with the new Horizon Lego game, put it on Switch. They'll make money from that as well.
Yeah, but they didn't willingly put it on Switch. That was, they were told they had to.
Do you really think Lego can tell the owner of Horizon Zero Dawn, you have to put this on Switch?
Yes. Yeah, 100% actually, because they're not going to look
Lego
at Lego
is more powerful than Sony.
I think this is I think in this regard, yes. Sony wants this done. And if you went to Lego, like WB, and you were like, hey, make us a Horizon game, they're like, cool. But the install base of your platform is only X. We're not going to make the money back for this system. You have to put it on something else. And that had to be where the negotiating point was.
Are you just proving my point by having the game on other platforms? They're making the money back by doing so. It's not the other platforms that are keeping them afloat. It's the fact that they're making the money back through other platforms, which allows them to invest and do this, that, and the other, and allows them to be able to make these bigger games. Like
Yeah, but
that's what I've been saying this whole time. I'm not saying specifically
I understand what you're
PC. I'm just saying.
I understand what you're saying. I'm just saying like $6 million in PC profit for a company the size of Sony
That's
is
the
like,
last we heard. We don't know official sales numbers. Sony's not going to release those. These apparently are just by taking the analytics and then taking into effect the 30% that Steam makes off of it as well. That's what I'm seeing for all the numbers I gave you, and I only gave you it for 3 of their 20 games. Like that's something you also have to keep in mind. I gave it to you for 3 of their 20. So like there's a lot more there. There's going to be more revenue there. And some of those games are more expensive. Some of those games were literally Helldivers 2 this year, which was one of the fastest and best-selling games that has released this year.
mm-hmm.
Next to Power World. Now, Sony stepped in and shot themselves in the foot. Absolutely. But those sales were already made.
Understandable. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
100,000 players that were constantly playing that game daily were coming from just PC. And I need you to understand there were like 125 to 130,000 daily players on Helldivers 2. 30,000 were all that was coming from the PlayStation side of things.
Yeah.
I do think that you underestimate things. I think that you don't understand just how far them putting their products on other platforms is helping them. And with the cost of games currently, I don't mean cost of us paying like $70 or $60. I mean to develop games and the development window of how long it takes and how there are few and far in between. The literal only game that we got that was a Sony actual game this year was Astrobot. Everything else has been third party. There was not
100%.
a Sony game this year. If they want to be able to do that, they need to be able to like expand, into other mediums, like not other mediums, other platforms. And they already have other mediums because they do Sony movies, but I don't think those budgets cross over if I'm mistaken. I think
shouldn't. I would be surprised.
I think they're all under an umbrella that is Sony, but they can't be allocated to like different fields, at least to my understanding. Not 100% sure, but that's the way I understand it as well. I do think at some point they're going to have to look and say, damn, 177 regions can't purchase our games. We kind of fucked up. I do think at some point that is going to have to happen, and then that's when they'll see those massive sales numbers again, and because of that, they will be like, oh, okay, all right then. I mean, like I said, games for Windows Live fucked up, and then Microsoft came back to PC and did really, really well on their PC sales. So, yeah.
A lot of differences between those two, and even the other companies that you mentioned too.
How is out of curiosity, how is there a lot of difference between what happened with Games for Windows Live and what Sony is currently doing with PSN on PC?
Well, I mean, actually, for Games for Windows Live, it's been so long, I probably can't differentiate that much in terms of the past. But in terms of perceived priorities, I would say one of the biggest differences between Sony and the other companies that you mentioned, at least currently, aside from maybe something like Helldivers, because obviously that's almost the outlier of everything else. But the other companies at least kind of prioritize PC as more of an equal platform, and Sony does not. And until they get past that, they're never going to make any real headway there.
Okay, I will tell you this right now. When Games for Windows Live launched,
I know how Games for Windows Live was when it launched. It was not. There was not that case.
Did not see them. That is correct. And it was kind of like growing pains where they had to learn, and that's kind of the point where Sony is at right now. It's growing pains where they have to learn how to actually accurately run their business to continue making money, and they're going to either do that and make a shit ton of money, or they're not, and then there will be more problems. I mean, there are going to be more problems because of Sony's own hubris. It's not specifically because of like a PC game flopping or this, that, and the other. It's because they're doing things like spending $400,000 on an absolute flop like Concord. It's because they're not thinking things.
Anyways, too. But it's probably not unreasonable with as crazy as they are. I don't think that number's legitimate. That's
Okay.
way too wild, even for Sony.
Okay. Okay. Let's conservatively then say it's 200,000, because let's also remember they made a TV show anthology for Concord off of Concord, and yes, that is still happening off of a dead game.
Yeah, no, still way too balloon
They
inflated.
definitely had to have used a lot of budget on this game.
Oh yeah,
They had
100%.
they
And
they had so
everything
many
I've read
things there.
was basically Sony looked at that game as too big to fail, which is a huge
Yes.
problem
Yeah.
to begin with. I think that 400,000 number is not necessarily a lie. I think that's what they were looking at for the lifetime spend of that game.
Hmm.
I just don't think that's what they've already spent on it.
Do you
That's my
think
guess. I
the
think that's where that
200,000 that I stated is closer to being correct?
I mean, yeah, it definitely has to be closer, but the question is how close. I wouldn't be surprised though if it's probably like I everything I've kind of read has made it sound like it
I'm going to say 200
probably
million,
they let
not
it
thousand.
go close there, yeah.
Yeah.
But the other thing is though, they didn't even get into the big marketing spend for that game yet.
Correct,
So,
correct. But they
um,
did already market it. And they did already spend money on marketing, and they already spent money on, again, like I said, a TV show for it that is still releasing in November.
mhm. Yeah, I'm sure they spent like stupid amounts of money on there.
Yeah, I
That's a
think so
big
too.
thing. But like I said, my point more was, when you have a company that's making like really dumb decisions like that,
Yeah.
even if let's just even be optimistic and say Sony made $3 million from all 20 PC games that they made, which they never did. But I mean that's what $90 million. Like it wouldn't even pay for half of Concord. Like
You're correct. You're correct. You are correct. However, when you have things like that that are flopping and you have revenue coming in from elsewhere, when you can't touch the revenue from something like the movie space and everything, but you do
mhm.
have it coming in from elsewhere, like their continuous revenue stream from PC gaming or their PSN accounts re-upping revenue stream, that sort of thing. I think a constant revenue stream that is continuously coming in over a short-term revenue stream of like, we launched a game, it sold a lot in its first 2 weeks, and it's done, which is something that absolutely happens on console very, very many times, as we already discussed. I think that is something that they would be looking at as well. Because when they put something up on PC or they put something up on PlayStation, or they have people subbing through PlayStation Network, whatever, they're always seeing a revenue stream come in because of the sales coming from those two things. They don't have to manage the PC games per se because they're just put up and they're done. However, they do have to manage PS Plus. And for instance, last night, PS Plus was out all night. PlayStation Network
Oh
would
yeah.
not boot up at all. And there was no way for people to make purchases of games or to play the games that they had already purchased if they were not the main account on the console. For instance, Katie last night could not play her games because I have the main account on the console. And so she
Yeah.
can only play games if she logged into my account. That
Mhm.
kind of sucks. And even locally, not being able to play your games is garbage. You know where they still would have been able to play their games? Because it's on PC. And they would still be having revenue streams through that. And they were losing a lot of revenue because of their outages last night. But they would still have been making revenue no matter what from any sales that came through of Ragnarok, any upcoming pre-orders for Until Dawn that's coming out in a few weeks, any of those sort of things. I just think if they got their heads out of their asses and went back to the way it was before, that would then be pretty much like guaranteed continuous revenue in a way that would keep them going for a very long time. Similar to how PS Plus is currently for them. But
Yeah.
I think by attempting to force these if there's one thing PC gamers hate, it's being forced to do something. They won't do it. They literally won't do it. It's just not going to happen. There's a lot of people that are being like, oh, why are they like this when it comes to Sony and this, that, and the other? And it's like, they're not. You just don't understand that quite literally all of these other companies have already gone through this same song and dance, threw their hands up and said, okay, we fucked up. We want money. We're going to do this the right way. And they did. And right now, it's Sony's turn. And eventually, they'll come around like everyone else did and go, fuck, we fucked up. Time to throw our hands up and say we were wrong and get money easily. That's literally all there is to it. I mean, they're making really dumb decisions right now. Like, really, really dumb decisions. A $700 console is not a good idea. Especially when you look at the performance of said $700 console. There are some things that have impressed me and maybe be like, oh, cool. Good thing that they can do that. I didn't expect them to be able to pull that off. But then there's other things that's like, okay, well, they're clearly using AI upscaling, and something like that already exists with DLSS, which is, a computer thing already exists. And that doesn't cost as much money as they're making it sound their PSSR cost, and their PSSR is just a fork of RDNA 4, which is a AMD FSR technology. So, like, why are you upcharging for that when I'm pretty sure RDNA 4 is not going to cost as much as you're trying to sell this PS5 for? So I don't know. They just keep making the horrible decisions, and I feel like they could have actually made some really smart decisions recently with the PS5 Pro pre-orders if they just launched the first edition of the console as all of them being the PlayStation Classic console, because you saw the PlayStation Classic console for the PS5 Pro and
really
PS5.
Honestly, I'm surprised
great.
they just didn't announce them at the same time. Like, that's another thing that boggles my mind.
Yeah.
Like, it literally was announced the next day.
Yeah.
Why not just show them off at the same time?
It looks great. Do you know how many of those they made?
It wasn't a lot. I remember that.
It's 12,000. That's it. Yeah. Just 12,000. And all of them were bought in seconds. So, that those people that bought those are not actually playing those and are just going to sell it at 5 times the market price. So, again, just make more and make more money, because there are people that are like, man, I wanted that classic, but I don't want to buy the normal. You could have had so much money if you just stocked more of the classic. They just make mistakes every step of the way, literally every single fucking step of the way. And I do not understand what their current business mindset is, other than we don't want money for some reason.
Yeah, no, it's they're just you got all these people running around I got this great idea, but nobody's sitting there listening to it and actually deciding whether or not it is a good idea.
Yeah,
it's a lot of nonsense.
Yeah.
Anyways,
so that's the week's PlayStation rant. I decided to throw that in there because I really had a lot of feelings towards PlayStation, and I will say a few things that aren't a rant because I don't want to just be seen as completely negative about them. Like I said before, the PlayStation 5 Pro has surprised me in some ways, since they've shown their extra details and information off. Because initially we saw some stuff, and people that analyzed it, those people being Digital Foundry, who are very good at doing that sort of thing, reported certain things like 30 FPS at 868p, which is just ridiculous. That's lower than 1080p, and it's not good, not a good look. But we've gotten more info, more details now, and there are games such as Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which will actually run at 60 with I think 1200p and better sharpening, which is great, because Final Fantasy VII Rebirth does not look that great on the base PS5. So I'm happy for people that are actually going to be able to experience that game in a way better light than on the base PS5. That's great for them. I don't think this technology is worth $700. I think it's more in line with $550, $600, maybe $650, but $700 without a disk drive is pretty fucking insane to me. I don't know, man. I think there's definitely something there, and I do think whenever the console goes on sale, inevitably, whenever the PS6 hits, or next year because of the poor sales, I do think it'll be a good buy and it'll be a great upgrade path for like people that haven't like come out of the PS4 generation yet.
Mm-hmm.
But I think currently it's not worth its price. But they are doing some really interesting things, such as I think they have 8K Gran Turismo 7 running on it at 60 FPS, and that's pretty fucking sick. It might have been 4K 60 and 8K 30, but either way, like no one has an 8K TV right now, and probably won't for a very long time. So that is future proofing in some ways, and that is really neat. I appreciate that because new technology is always really cool to see. However, that price point for the early adopters is just insane. And there are tons of people that are like, it is whatever, you pay 700 or you wait and get the PS6 for like 700. And I'm like, brother, the PS6 is going to be $1,000 minimal. Like, there's no way they're going to go from $700 to lower or the same price. It's just not happening. And I do feel like we are getting closer and closer to console market crashing really hard when you make these items almost like the same price as luxury items that you would have on like the PC space. I do think like one of the things that console gamers have always had over PC gamers is the price to what they get. They get a pretty decent and enjoyable plug and play experience with their games. But I feel like this last gen with the PS5 and the Xbox Series X has been like not that in particular. And then you look at what is on the horizon with stuff like the PS5 Pro and the price for that compared to like the original PS5, and it's not looking good for the console space when we're getting close to like the price of like high-end graphics cards. It's really not getting there. It's really not looking good. But I do think that they are at least doing some cool shit. Like, I'm glad that like AI upscaling is going to console now, and supposedly even the Switch too, right? That was one of the rumors, wasn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
We'll see.
yeah. I'm excited, but I'm not excited for the price.
No. Well, I think the Switch price they have rumored at about 500 or less, is what I saw.
That's still a bit much. If it's like $399, that's way easier to swallow, in my opinion. Because
My
you got to
guess is
look at
that's probably what they're looking
what
to hit.
500 gets you elsewhere. Like, that gets you a Steam Deck and like a terabyte of hard drive space. That's like,
Yeah, and they're not going to go that hard. Yeah. We'll see. I mean, I don't know. They keep saying it's going to get announced at any time, so maybe this month will be the month. I think October, if I remember, was when it was announced. The original Switch was announced originally when they had done like that kind of like cinematic reveal or whatever. So we'll see. Should be soon. All right. I'm gonna talk about what I've been playing.
I didn't even realize that you hadn't even talked about what you've been playing. I am so sorry.
It's okay. I don't think we have any news, so it's whatever. So we got to fill out time anyways. Anyways, yeah. So Legend of Zelda: Echoes of Wisdom. That's what I've been playing. So
Yes.
It came out on Friday. It is new 2D Zelda. It looks like from what I saw, it's the same team that did the Link's Awakening remake. Grezzo, who also did the Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask remakes, and what else did they do? Triforce Heroes. I think those are all under their name. So that's what they've been doing. I have to say, though, this game feels to me like the most 2D Zelda that I've played in a long time. If that makes any sense.
Okay.
So it is very. It reminds me so much of the Oracle games on the Game Boy Advance. Not quite sure why exactly, but it gives me very much Oracle Ages vibe, like very classic 2D Zelda stuff. Even though you're not playing as Link, you're playing as Zelda, and you kind of magic powers instead of like running around with like a sword and shield and those kind of things. So kind of the crutch of the game is that, how does it work? Something's going on in Hyrule as to be expected. And there's all these kind of strange rifts opening up all over the place. Link gets sucked into one, as does, well, after he's fighting with Ganon, you see that kind of in the initial like trailer cutscene that the game showed off that had been shown off when the game was originally announced. So you kind of see that. But then Zelda's freed. She gets released from captivity, and now she's kind of on her own adventure. She gets this magic wand that lets her basically make like copies or what they call echoes of different like objects around the world. So they could be things like tables, but any enemy you can defeat, you can also make echoes of them as well. So basically, you can kind of like keep on defeating better and better enemies, and then get better and better like kind of echoes to use. So and each echo has kind of limitations on it as well. It's got kind of like a triangle system to show you how many of those you can kind of generate. So basically, like when you start out the game, your kind of companion Tri has only 3 little triangles, so you can make like 3 triangles worth of echoes at that point. So maybe like 3 tables, or you could do maybe 1 enemy who's worth 3 triangles worth of cost. So I have a bunch of different variety there. One thing that I think is neat is the game uses kind of like in the center, it uses the base map of Link to the Past, but it's expanded on all the sides. So there are like lots of new areas to explore in between, like a lot of the areas that seem a little bit more familiar. Even though they've made some changes to those areas, things have gotten moved around slightly, or uh, they've repurposed some old areas or dungeons to have kind of new rules. So I think that's kind of interesting. So far, let's see, where am I? So far, I think I've done like 7 dungeons. I want to say I'm getting very much closer to the end of the game. The dungeons themselves are very fun. They're clever, but they're not terribly long. They're pretty short dungeons. Um, some of them are not very difficult at all, and some of them are very clever. Like there was one yesterday. There was a puzzle, and I like tried it a couple times, and I'm like, no, I gotta walk away. Can't do it. Then I was like in my car thinking about it later that day, and I'm like, okay, I figured it out. And went back and kind of like, okay, I'm like, we'll use these things and this thing, and see if that does the trick to get through the store, and it did. So it definitely encourages experimentation. It has some. I know some people look at it and they're like, oh, it's Tears of the Kingdom inspired kind of with some of the mechanics that they have there, and maybe a little bit. There's some things that kind of feel reminiscent to it, but it feels in other ways more like kind of Mario Maker, which makes sense because apparently we found out, I think it was last week, that this game originally actually started off as like a dungeon maker for Zelda. So there's some things in there that just kind of seem like very reminiscent of that. And I think you can see it too, just kind of with the breadth of enemies and characters that are there, because pretty much anything you can think of almost in Zelda is there. Like they got Gorons, they got Zoras, they have Deku Scrubs. It gives me like a lot of like on top of the Link to the Past vibe, it's got a very Majora's Mask vibe on top of it. It's got a Link Between Worlds vibe on top of it. Like it really kind of pulls in from like a lot of different Zelda games in the past. So I really like that. And to the Tears of the Kingdom kind of comparison, you can kind of incredible machine, some things together and do some neat stuff with them. On the flip side, though, you can also just kind of use the same old tried and true methods of getting onto cabinets or bookshelves or climbing, whatever, as you could, just like always. You can stack beds on top of each other and climb that way. It's always the easy way. Or you can summon a bird and you can use your bind ability and fly that way by kind of attaching to the bird. So tons of different options, and you can be very clever, or you can kind of do things basically, but it gives you a bunch of different options that are there. Game definitely still has some frame rate issues that were present in Link's Awakening remake.
Link's Awakening. Mm-hmm.
I will say though, it's not as noticeable to me as it was in that game. So there's some areas that may still have like a little bit of frame rate issues, but definitely seem improved. I think that some of the worst frame rate issues that people were complaining about the last couple of days probably more has to do with emulation than the machine itself. Because I saw some like really dramatic reports of frame rate issues, and I'm like, I have not seen that. I'm like, there's definitely frame rate issues.
I saw them in Digital Foundry's video. I don't know because I haven't played. I'm kind of done with Switch games right now unless something really catches my eyes.
Yeah.
Until the Switch 2.
Yeah,
And
my
yeah.
understanding is it has the same kind of frame rate issues like Link's Awakening does, where it jumps between 30 and 60. It's just not like it probably would be less obnoxious if they locked it to 30, but for some reason they didn't. Um, and so you get kind of like a rebound effect in certain areas. I don't notice it inside dungeons or interior areas at all. I honestly really don't even notice it in some of the exterior areas. It seems like it's more localized to like city areas from what I've been able to see. Um, that's at least where I notice it most prominently. My guess is probably like like I've always said, it's got to be pretty bad for me to notice it. So my guess is it's probably going on a lot more. But at least the areas where you really notice the chug tend to be more specific areas. But otherwise, though, the game looks like really charming. I like the art style in Link's Awakening, but actually I like it a lot more in this. It kind of reminds me almost of a Lego game in some ways. I think just because you get kind of a lot of those chibi forms of Zelda characters that we've not seen in like a while. And it still has that kind of nice like claymation look, and they do some clever things with that whole mechanic that they have built underneath there. I think the music's really good. I like what they did there with this. They did bring back
Hmm.
kind of the orchestrated music again.
Okay.
They did some clever things too. Like, so there is a sword fighting mechanic in this game. Like, you can kind of change forms
Okay.
later, and kind of temporarily become like a sword fighter, kind of like Link. Um, and that helps kind of with some puzzle solving or some with some combat stuff. But like I said, they do make it so you have a bunch of different ways to approach things. So even if um, you could, like, let's say you're trying to fight an enemy, you can turn to go into sword fighter mode. You can beat them that way. You could summon enemies with your echo rod. You can beat them that way. You could even do something like summon like a blower, like something that blows um, like whatever across the room or prevents enemies from getting close. And I've seen people stand on top of that and then just drop like sea urchins onto them and use it like a missile launcher. So you got
Huh.
tons of options for kind of like ways to solve things. So I don't know. I really like it, and the world's huge. Like, it's massive. Like, there's like a disgusting amount of things to kind of explore here.
Hmm.
Another thing that they kind of brought back here from some of the more recent games too, Zelda can get accessories which you can use to kind of power up a little bit more. So you can get things, I guess, kind of more like Breath of the Wildy, where like some of the outfits would give you abilities. This game does too. So you can get like an item that lets you swim faster, or an item that reduces your damage, or an item that makes it so you'll find hearts more frequently, for example. So they have a lot of that kind of stuff built in there. Um, and they also, another nice thing with the dungeons too is because this is kind of more puzzle based. It doesn't have some of those um, things like Zelda games usually do, where it's like each dungeon has its own exclusive item. No, doesn't have anything like that. That's not really kind of your goal in going through the dungeons. And then it's also another thing that I think is kind of interesting too. It's not like this game doesn't have the old tried and true like, hey, you need 8 of these to do this, or 5 of these to unlock this dungeon. It's really just kind of more story based in terms of like the progression. So it's a bit of a tighter experience. I think there is some open endedness to, you can't always approach every dungeon like immediately. Like, you couldn't just go to the end dungeon like say like other games that they've done recently, like Tears of the, or not. I don't think Tears of the Kingdom lets you do it. Breath of the Wild, though, it doesn't let you just go like straight to the final boss. Like, there is some like choices there, but there's points where it'd be like, hey, go take care of one of these 3 things, and I think you can do those kind of dungeons in any particular order. Trying to think what else there is. I think those are kind of like the big things for this game. Honestly, I really enjoy it. I think this is probably one of my favorite Zelda games in quite a few years. So I think that this one's, it's definitely very memorable, and I think it's very unique. So I'm kind of curious to see if it kind of holds up all the way through. But so far, so good. I've been really enjoying it. What questions do you have? Anything I can answer for you? I feel like I kind of
No,
just
not
ran over things
really.
really
I
fast.
I feel like you did run over a lot, but also this is a game I've had like very little interest in.
And that's what surprised me too. I had no interest. I mean, not no interest. I would say though,
uh,
like this game, I was like, I'm gonna buy it. I'm like, I want to play it because I like Zelda games, but I was not like, oh man, I really need to play this game. The thing that surprised me the most is when I sat down and played it. I was like, okay, I'm like, I'm really kind of liking this a lot more than I expected it to. The trailers just really did not sell it to me. And like I said, I guess I didn't really know what to expect, but when I sat down and played it, I was like, okay, this is a lot more like I said, it reminded me a lot more of like the Oracle games, like Oracle of Seasons and Oracle of Ages, than it did with I don't know, whatever I thought this game was gonna be. So yeah, I'd say if you like 2D Zelda games, even if you didn't necessarily maybe like love this trailer, you might be more pleasantly surprised than you would think.
okay, all right. Maybe I'll give it a go at some point.
Yeah. Maybe wait till the Switch 2, because hopefully that will give it a performance boost. Um, surprisingly, and who knows, maybe they'll change their mind. It's one of the few games this year that Nintendo has not done a demo for. It's more uncommon for them to not do it, I feel like, than it is lately. But Zelda's probably one where they're like, it will sell on its own. We really don't have to. Um, so maybe that's the case. I mean, I like I said, this is a game that pleasantly surprised me, and for some reason I feel like they put like zero marketing behind this game. So um, we'll see. We'll see how it ends up turning out. But like I said, so far so good. I do really enjoy it, and hopefully we'll see more from this. And it's nice to see them too. And I know it's something that I think you and Nick have kind of openly voiced over the
Hmm.
years recently. But just the more want for a 2D or a linear Zelda game, and this definitely hits
True.
both of those notes. So, like I said, maybe consider it at some point. Like I said, you might be really pleasantly surprised. Like I said, I was very pleasantly surprised. So it struck me a lot differently than I thought it would. Anything else on it?
Um, no, not really. I need a demo to play for it. I just can't really wrap my head fully around it without playing it myself. Like I hear you explaining it, but it's still just kind of like I get it, but I don't see how it works. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, and I think you really can't see it until you play it, because I feel like, and I think part of my like maybe lack of excitement for it initially was because of the what's the word I'm looking for, maybe more of the comparisons between like Tears of the Kingdom and this game. So I was like, well, I really don't want like a 2D Tears of the Kingdom game. But I don't think that's how this game feels. It really doesn't feel like a 2D Tears of the Kingdom. Like I said, it feels kind of more like a sandbox. Maybe starting with that kind of sandbox kind of demo that they originally thought of with like Breath of the Wild, where they're like, I don't know if you remember how they originally like prototyped Breath of the Wild, kind of like the concept of it.
Yeah.
But they took Zelda 1 and they were like, you could use you could like chop down a tree and then you could turn it into a bridge, and that was kind of like, where that kind of like whole idea came from. You could use fire to like light the bushes on fire. It could kind of cascade. So it kind of seems like they started more in like that area and we're like, okay, let's kind of mess around with this a little bit more, and it just kind of ended up building off of there. Um, but like I said, it doesn't strike me as like full on Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom. Like I said, some people kind of initially put it as. There's some puzzle aspects like that, but just kind of other things. Just to kind of, this game has actual dungeons. It doesn't have like the shrines like you saw all over like Tears of the Kingdom. Like those kind of things are gone. So it's got like the nice kind of story thing. Um, and like I said, these rooms are kind of more. Everything in this game is more puzzle based.
Hmm.
Combat is always second, unless it's a boss, in which case there might be competing interests. But otherwise, everything is very puzzle based. It's definitely
Nice.
kind of more of the wisdom take as opposed to the courage take that they usually do with Zelda. So we'll see. Um, yeah, I think that you might be, like I said, pleasantly surprised with this game. So, but we'll see. Like I said, I plan to finish up between. I'm hoping I'll be done with it by next week, but we'll see. Um, all right. Um, but that's all I got this week. Um,
Yeah, I think
you-
that's it for me too.
okay. Ready to wrap up then?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. Well then. Thank you everyone for listening to us tonight. Don't forget to find us on Stitcher, Google, Amazon, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. iTunes. Duh. Obviously. Knew I was forgetting a big one. And if you want to check out all of our old episodes, you can go to game-crunch.com. All of our old episodes are there. I don't know why I just saw it today anecdotally, but we have even though this is episode 589, apparently there are 620 episodes on that
That's
website.
insane. Why? Why are we like this?
Yeah, so many. That's a lot. It's a lot of things. So yeah, so we got that. What else was I gonna say? Oh, if you want to reach out to us, gamecrunchcast@gmail.com. Brandon.
No, I got nothing. I'm good to go.
Okay. Well, that said, my name is Mike Anastasia. You can find me online. I'm Clash Bang with there or on your favorite gaming console. And until next week, game on.
Game on.
Little toys on the shelf, collect them all, can't help myself. Figures dancing in line, bringing magic every time. Scan them in with the beat, adventure wakes from its sleep. In the game they come alive, add some flair on every drive. Amiibo, Amiibo, portal to the game you show. Amiibo, Amiibo, the rhythm of the play we know. Dressed in colors bright and bold, treasures that we love to hold. With a click the story's told, endless fun in worlds of gold. Heroes filling side by side, in the game they all collide. Each one has a tale to spin, place them down, let fun begin. Amiibo, Amiibo, bringing joy where we go. Amiibo, Amiibo, the rhythm of the play we know. Adventure wakes from its sleep. In the game they come alive, add some flair on every drive. Amiibo, Amiibo, portal to the game you show. Amiibo, Amiibo, the rhythm of the play we know. Dressed in colors bright and bold, treasures that we love to hold. With a click the story's told, endless fun in worlds of gold. Dressed in colors bright and bold, treasures that we love to hold. With a click the story's told, endless fun in worlds of gold. Yeah.
And there she is.
All right.
And that's all I got. I don't think I have anything exciting.
I don't have anything either. This has been a long week.